It's a tight race in Zambia as voters cast their ballots for a new president. Are plant-based proteins the secret to living a longer life? And a Tanzanian company carves out a niche in the chocolate world. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu. This is Africa 54. The polls have just closed in Zambia, and the race for the presidency is too close to call. Zambians also voted Thursday to elect legislators in what has been a bruising political battle against the backdrop of lethargic growth, as weak commodity prices have hit Africa's second biggest copper producer. President Edgar Lungu and his main rival, Hakainde Hichilema, both say they are confident of outright victory. But both men could fail to garner more than 50% of the vote as required by electoral law, forcing a second round of voting. A rerun must be held within 37 days if no one succeeds. Supporters of Lungu's ruling Patriotic Front and Hichilema's United Party for National Development clashed in the run-up to the poll, forcing the Electoral Commission to suspend campaigning at one point. Now, for more news on the close presidential race in Zambia, VOA's Anita Powell joins us live via Skype from Johannesburg, South Africa. Anita, definitely the campaigns had a bit of violence, but the polls today were largely peaceful.
Right. So far, the Electoral Commission has not reported any major problems. They said voting mostly started on time, there were long queues, and it seemed to go well. Right now, that's all we have, but it seemed to have gone okay.
Anita, again, the tight is extremely tight. Who is likely to win this election?
That's the million kwacha question. The candidates are just too close to call. Nobody knows yet.
And again, Anita, when you look at Edgar Lungu and Hichilema, what are the major differences between these two candidates?
So Lungu is running as a continuity candidate. You recall he sort of inherited the post from the former president who died suddenly, Michael Sata. So he's running on the same platform of continuity. Hichilema wants to really shake things up and bring in more investment. As you recall, he's a businessman. So they are pretty different. And there are two very different choices for Zambian voters. And
do we know when the results are likely to be announced?
So last time it took about 3 days. I think we're on track for about the same this time.
And again, Anita, ruling parties in Southern Africa sometimes seem to be facing a lot of challenges, especially these days. What is really going on in the region?
So we're seeing that here in South Africa, where the ruling ANC lost a lot of ground in the last election. We're seeing this in Zimbabwe and Angola. I talked to some analysts today, and they say basically these ruling parties, the liberation movements of yesteryear, are just out of touch with young voters who want change, who don't remember the war, the struggle, and they want to see more jobs, more improvements, more services.
Is this the case for Zambia as well? What are the real issues that Zambians are looking forward to?
So we have two big trends in Zambia, and they're both economic. One is the copper price has gone down significantly, and the other is the food price has gone up significantly amid this horrible drought. So this year has really hurt Zambians' pockets, and so they're voting based on, the economy, basically.
Do you think after the results are announced there may be some sort of violence, looking at the campaign which was marred by violence, because the race is tight, as we said?
Analysts have predicted that there will be violence because the opposition may say that the poll was rigged. Of course, nobody is hoping for violence. Everybody's hoping that if there is any dispute, it's resolved peacefully through the courts.
Anita, watch that for us, and we'll get some updates in the coming days. Anita Powell, thank you for reporting there live via Skype from Johannesburg, South Africa. Moving on, the government of South Sudan says it rejects a U.S.-sponsored draft resolution that is being circulated at the United Nations Security Council, calling for deployment of a regional protection force to Juba and other parts of the country wrecked by violent clashes. The Juba government's information minister, Vincent Makori, said such a force would be unacceptable if it is supervised by the United Nations mission in South Sudan, and that it would undermine South Sudan's sovereignty.
It is our right to object. And if people decide to impose it, then this is outside the convention and the and whatever documents of the UN and all the regional documents. There is nowhere in the world where you can decide to impose. Yes, we know America can sometimes decide to take a unilateral decision because it is the world power.
The UN Security Council has extended the mandate of the UNMISS force, which was about to expire until this Friday. Heads of state of the Regional Trade Bloc Intergovernmental Authority on Development have been meeting in Addis Ababa to discuss the proposed regional protection force. South Sudanese authorities also oppose deploying a protection force under UNMISS authority. Makori said the government is concerned that might result in the use of armed unmanned aircraft or drones by UNMISS and related forces. Uganda's political climate has been one of tension since incumbent Yoweri Museveni was re-elected. Supporters of top opposition candidate Kizza Besigye disagreed with the results and clashed with police who were accused of using heavy-handed tactics to break up the opposition gatherings and confrontations with civil society groups. However, the political landscape in Uganda is changing, and now there are many active youth legislators who are becoming more involved in their communities. And joining me here in the studio are two of those youth members of parliament, Oscar Omonyi Otema, representing the North, and Ishma Mafabi, who represents the eastern part of Uganda. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
Oscar, let me start with you, because the community where you come from, especially the youth, have endured years of untold suffering under the rebel Lord's Resistance Army. What is the situation like today? Has this changed at all?
Well, thank you so much. The situation of late has changed so much. Definitely the LRA war took the toll in northern Uganda. About 20 years ago, so many young people were in the camps, but today we see the young people are more engaged in developmental activities, and we see them engaging in agriculture. We see the youth now getting out of camps, as we see today.
Ishma, turning to you from eastern Uganda, where your constituency is located, it has also taken a dip, actually, with reports especially of land grabbing in that part of the country. What is being done, and what is your plan to tackle this vice?
Yes, very well, thank you so much. And upon the topic, His Excellency, the newly elected President of Uganda, he has made sure that he emphasizes an enforcement of laws upon land grabbing and any issues related to land. And the main issue that I could actually say or hint about is that he has actually involved himself personally, and to see how maybe, if I could say, his children are doing, the children of the nation, and to be able to address to them. And as far as now into the parliament, or as legislators, when we get time, or when we sit into parliament, we have to actually, there is a bill that has been passed on, and right now it's being reviewed.
Again, Oscar, turning to you, going back to the LRA, the displacement, of course, like we said, has, made so many people have been displaced by this. And when you look at the youth who are recruited to fight alongside the LRA, have you been able to kind of have programs to integrate them back into the society, or what's going on with the youth around that region?
Well, the youth in northern Uganda, if you compare the young people of northern Uganda and you compare them with the eastern and central and maybe western, they are still behind in regards to education, in regards to the way they live their lives. But the government has come through. We have brought a program called the Youth Livelihood Program, where we give these youth some money to do agricultural activities, and they're trying to engage in more skillful development activities, and we see them now coming out of that situation of the LRA.
Mm-hmm. And again, Isham, in eastern Uganda, landslides, reports of landslides almost every other season, has been one of the biggest challenges there. How is this being taken care of? Is there a way to get out of that problem and save the communities who are losing homes, losing their lives, and so much?
All right, thank you for that. Actually, that's a very interesting topic in eastern Uganda. And as far as right now, if I could say the peak of the late or the mid 2015, it has been addressed to the fullest. As I had said also earlier, the president, and the reason as to why the power was given to him, it's because he has had this personal engagement into this, and to make sure that everything is settled. And my reports, the reports that I get onto my desk as far as health concerns and land issues are concerned in that area in Bugisu region in eastern Uganda, it is positive. Right now, the donations are there, mattresses, reallocations from the place, and security measures have been improvised as far as maintaining no loss of lives.
Now, turning to the political scenario in Uganda, which everybody expects us to talk about, and I'm going to give you just a few seconds each to talk about it. As the members of parliament who are said to be the youthful members of parliament, how are you working to change the political scenario that has been one of chaos since February when the elections were held? Oscar, starting with you.
Oh, that's a very interesting one. I know out here in the world, people really look at Uganda as a country where there's a lot of political turmoil, or maybe the opposition is being suppressed, but that's not true.
What are you going to do? Because I'm running out of time. How are you changing the scenario?
Well, what we're trying to change with the whole scenario is we're trying to talk to the young people to change the mindsets on the way they look at political and how the politics of the country runs.
Just to chip in a little with my dear brother here, the political side has really changed to the greater good. The politics of today is different from the politics of yesterday. The way issues are handled, they're not very different, but just how people anticipate them or how they approach the answers to them. The election to his position that he managed to attain, as my brother said earlier, it was not, how can I say, forced.
So you think that the youth in parliament are going to change how this country shapes up in politics in the near future?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
all
yes.
right, thank you, gentlemen. Oscar Omoni Otema is Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament, and Ishma Mafabi is Youth Member of Parliament for Eastern Uganda. In the battle for the White House, both presidential candidates are holding rallies in states where the voter population is still undecided. Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton has returned to Iowa, where she hopes to sway voters with her plan for economic growth. Meanwhile, Republican Donald Trump is proving to be immune to criticism, despite a desertion from some of his own party members. VOA's Latza Hoke reports.
The news headlines on Tuesday expressed alarm over Trump's suggestion that Second Amendment people, meaning gun owners, may be able to prevent Clinton's appointment of Supreme Court justices. Many saw the remark as a call to violence, but not this voter.
I don't know, man. I'm sorry. That sounds just kind of weird. He always says something like that. Like, is it on purpose, you think? Probably. I don't know. I think he's just a rabble-rouser, like usual. He's a demagogue. I don't know. I honestly, the only reason why I'm voting for Hillary is because of the fact that he just does not make any sense with what he says.
While Trump's supporters rushed to deny that he meant violence, the Republican candidate told a rally in Virginia not to trust the press.
The New York Times actually did a story, and this was sort of amazing. They said, we hate him so much. Essentially, they're saying we hate him so much. We're going to be biased.
Trump claimed that the news media are largely ignoring the revelations from the latest batch of Clinton's released emails from her tenure as Secretary of State. He noted that few outlets raised questions about the nature of the State Department's relationship with the Clinton Foundation.
A couple of very bad ones came out, and it's called pay for play. And some of these were really, really bad and illegal. If it's true, it's illegal.
Clinton said Trump has proved time and again that he does not have the temperament to be Commander-in-Chief of the United States. During a visit to Iowa Wednesday, she continued to focus on the economy.
I am someone who believes that if we do infrastructure and we do clean, renewable energy jobs, we're going to be on the way to a 21st century economy that will work for everybody, not just those at the top.
Clinton says her economic plan would create more than 10 million new jobs. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Some people think it's
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54 and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, August 11th marks 2 years since the last polio case was detected in Africa. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lenore Mudu with news of a polio milestone. Lenore?
That's right, Esther. August 11 marks 2 years since the last wild polio case was detected on the African continent in Somalia, a milestone for the polio eradication program in Africa and globally. The World Health Organization removed Nigeria from the list of endemic countries in September 2015, the last African country on the list. Pakistan and Afghanistan are the last two polio endemic countries. When the Global Polio Eradication Initiative was formed in 1988, about 350,000 children were getting infected with wild polio virus every year worldwide. The WHO says the number of infections is now down to 99%. Africa must remain a full year without new cases to be declared polio-free. Dr. Muhammad Pate is former chairman of the Nigerian Presidential Task Force on Polio Eradication and founder of the Chigari Foundation, which collaborates with the Gates Foundation. He elaborates on some possible challenges in reaching the 3-year mark and what can be done.
A couple of challenges I think that Nigeria faces. First, when you don't have as many cases as you used to, or 0 cases for 2 years, the risk is political leaders, wider society might begin to feel polio is gone and they move on to other things. We need to sustain the high levels of population immunity that led us to interrupt transmission until polio is eradicated. And it's a challenge when you don't see many cases. Secondly, there are still pockets of areas in the country which are a bit difficult to reach, previously because of security. But now that the security has improved, the program has to reach as many kids as possible in those areas to make sure that the polio virus doesn't have an area where it can continue to transmit. Thirdly, the economic circumstances in the country. The fiscal position of government is not as it used to be. So the financial position of government to fund the immunization campaigns, to fund part of the cost of vaccines, is going to be a challenge for political leaders to actually make those decisions, to apply the resources that are needed so that Nigeria remains polio-free until it's completely eradicated the virus. The current president has expressed his intent to do whatever he can to make sure that polio doesn't come back, which is reassuring. But beneath the president, there are state governors, particularly in the northeast and northwest part of the country, that need to really also remain vigilant despite the financial difficulties that they are in, to ensure that the work is done. Because otherwise it will be a disaster for the country, it will be a disaster for the continent, and it will be a disaster for the world. If all these investments that have been made over years are not allowed to get the country to where it needs to be in terms of eradicating the virus.
And medical experts have called for a renewed international effort to step up immunization and improve surveillance in the fight against polio. Moving on, the average American eats a lot of meat, especially red meat. Meat packs a lot of protein, but as VOA's Carol Pearson reports, if you want to have a long, healthy life, well, you should get more of your protein from plants.
The hamburger is as American as, well, the 4th of July. There's no doubt that Americans love their burgers, but new research shows they should love them a little less. Doctors Ming-Yang Song and Andrew Chan from Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard University were among those who examined how animal and plant-based protein impact people's health. They studied data from 2 major long-term studies involving more than 130,000 participants. The researchers gathered information on the participants' diets, lifestyles, and health. And after thorough analysis, they came to this conclusion.
Individuals that consume the highest amounts of animal-based proteins had a somewhat higher risk of mortality, in particular cardiovascular mortality.
And these associations are stronger among people with unhealthy lifestyle factors.
Protein helps build and repair muscles and bones. It's essential. But red meat, especially, is high in cholesterol, a risk factor in heart disease. The researchers found that cardiovascular problems were higher among people who not only ate meat, but also smoked, drank heavily, were obese or sedentary. They also found that people who replaced animal protein with plant protein reduced their risk of premature death.
Clearly, over the long term, a diet which is comprised primarily of plant-based proteins tends to be more favorable for longevity than someone who consumes most of their protein from animal sources.
The study appears in JAMA, Internal Medicine. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, well, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Esther?
Thank you, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A closer look at Tanzania's first producer of indigenous gourmet chocolate. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Zambia, citizens vote in the general election for current President Edgar Lungu or his rival Hakainde Hichilema. Both promise to fix the broken economy. In Libya, government forces seize control of the convention hall complex in Sirte that has acted as a symbolic base for the Islamic State. In South Sudan, government rejects a proposal by the U.S. to deploy 4,000 more UN troops to the country. Finally, in Ethiopia, the UN urges the government to allow observers into regions where it's been reported that 90 protesters were killed by security forces. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. This is no ordinary drone. This prototype is claimed to be able to detect, map, and destroy active landmines. First, the drone flies over an area, creating detailed 3D maps and identifying certain danger areas with GPS waypoints. Then the drone is equipped with a robotic metal detecting arm and hovers around 4 centimeters above the ground to detect and geographically tag the mine. Finally, the robotic gripping arm and places a small detonator on each detected landmine. The landmine is then detonated from a safe distance using a timer. The drone is still in the development phase. Next up, a New York City cafe is offering a cool summer treat with a twist. Greenwich Village's Springbone Kitchen caters to people who believe in the bone broth movement, a trendy diet which claims to be a good source of protein. This summer, the eatery has been thinking outside the box, featuring a popsicle with the added health boost of broth. The frozen treat's other ingredients include fruit puree, berries, and pomegranate juice. The restaurant's owner claims the broth pops taste so authentic they could even fool someone who's not a health enthusiast. And finally, great news for Game of Thrones fans. Another fiction series created by George R.R. Martin is to be adapted for television. Universal Cable Productions has brought the TV rights to the author's Wild Cards, which is based around the fallout of an alien virus that spreads across the earth. Martin won't be working on the adaptation himself due to his exclusive deal with HBO and his commitments to writing the 6th book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. However, his assistant editor will serve as executive producer, and that's what's trending today. African chocolate made from African cocoa beans. That's the dream of many cocoa African farmers, where 70% of the world's cocoa is grown, but the most of the beans are exported. roar to the West, and Africa only gets a snippet of the global revenues, and it means that most cocoa-producing African countries have to import chocolate at high cost. But there's one company in Tanzania that tries to make a difference. Ruud Elmendorp has more.
An African sweet surprise nurtured on African soil, ready for sampling in chocolate mamas, open a few years now in an uptown shopping mall in Dar es Salaam.
Natural flavor, not too sweet.
These tourists can't wait to taste some of the local candy, which otherwise would have been imported from overseas.
I don't normally eat chocolate, you know. So, but this one, yeah, definitely I'm going to take it.
35-year-old Jackie Kiweka is the founder of Chocolate Mamas. She got the idea for chocolate making when in another job she was dealing with the high price for imported chocolate, while in Tanzania the cocoa beans were available.
And then we were thinking of how we were going to get a good constant supply of chocolate, and we couldn't figure it out because it was going to be very expensive to import all the chocolate. Then we said, hey, we should make chocolate because there's exported cocoa beans, but nobody else is making chocolate in Tanzania, so that's what we should do, and that's what we did.
The chocolate is manufactured in a workshop in Dar es Salaam from cocoa beans that were procured locally from farmers in Tanzania. Now, could Tanzanian chocolate become a success story? Maybe, but for the average Tanzanian, it's still too expensive. And when asking around on the streets of Dar es Salaam, only a few say to buy it for romantic occasions.
Now, chocolate, a little bit of it, I use it to approach a lady, like a present for my girlfriend, my beauty.
Jackie targets middle-class customers and sees the demand growing after a slow start.
When we started making it, everybody was a little skeptical about this chocolate that's being made in Tanzania, like what? But then everybody that tried it came back for more.
And even though Jackie opened 3 shops now with local chocolate, it remains small compared to the massive raw cocoa export from Africa. But it's a start, and it can grow, as other Tanzanian producers may follow. This is Ruud Elmendorp for the Voice of America in Dar es Salaam.
I could do with some chocolate, but that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website. Good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. This word is about the conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Crippling.
Despite weeks of crippling airstrikes on Hamas targets, polls suggest many in Israel feel Mr. Netanyahu did not go far enough in destroying the militant group.
Crippling means to cause severe damage. It makes something or someone unable to operate as before.
Israel dropped many bombs on Hamas targets, causing great damage.
A person with a crippling disease cannot move normally.
So, the next time you hear the word crippling, you will know what this news word means.
Check out our Facebook page, VOA's Learning English, and friend us.